greetings and welcome again to the Pan-African Congress Mojo session. And today, we'd like to welcome you again to these regular Sunday meetings. These are meetings held by the Pan-African Congress movements, and these meetings has been ongoing for many, many years. So, as you know, the pandemic, it's something that's been having a great effect on our community over the times. Now we are back in a second lockdown, and we are not too sure when life will return to normal. So as we endure the to and fro's of these pandemics, we thought it'd be good to have a look in terms of what's happening, especially to the African community concerning the pandemic that's going on. So today we'll be looking to what I call keys to combating the pandemic, especially looking at how we could strengthen our immune system to help overcome this virus or viruses in general when we get it. And also we'll be taking an overall look from the pandemic start on up until the situation today, and what we as a community, as an African community, what our approach has been and where we could improve some of the things we are doing, or where we could seek out and search out information which will be of great benefits to us. So as usual, before we actually go into the discussion, I'll ask Ndugwe Mani, who's here, who will be changing the energy for us. So as you can see from the screen, we have Elder Cecil Gotsmore, who's one of our resident presenters, also Elder Pepperkai, and we're still waiting for two others to arrive. So as soon as they arrive, I'll put them up on the screen. So now I'll hand over to Ndugwe Imani.
Okay. Asante sana Ndugwe Tahaka, Shikamo, MJ Cecil, Shikamo, MJ Pepperkai, which basically means, Shikamo basically means I give you my respect. And MZ means elder in Kiswahili. Kiswahili is the language that we try to speak in the Pan-African Congress movement, because after the Sixth African Pan-African Congress, it was said that when we have a United States of Africa or a similar entity, that the lingua franca, the language for commerce, for education, for communication, should be Kiswahili, because so many Africans speak that language on the continent, but still giving respect to all other traditions and languages as well. So we are going to start on the Mabadiliko ya Nishati, which in Kiswahili means changing the energy. There's a form of libation or tambiko in Swahili. So we're using our energy and not just our water, and it's something that I've created and have shared with the organization that we've adopted at the beginning of all our sessions here on when we're working in these virtual medium, so that we can join together in spirit, even though we don't have the pleasure and the beautiful energy we have when we can be physically together, but we can still join with each other because we are an essentially spiritual entities, and so wherever we are, we have that connection with each other. So I'm going to share my screen. And if you can hear me, as Pepperkai and MZ Cecil, do I have your permission to continue?
Yes, my brother.
Okay, Asante Sana. Okay.
Hold on, let's put that back up. Okay.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so there you can see everything that you'll see will be in either Kiswahili or Kemetic terms, or some references to the Loa of Voudon. Okay, but they'll also be in English as well. So this is not only us sharing our culture and our traditions and our spirituality, it's also a teaching exercise. And so it does take a 10 to 15 minutes to go through this, but we shouldn't rush our connection to our spirit. It's our foundation of our of culture and our way of life, and to recapture it after it's been stolen and we have forgotten it for very good reasons is a work that we should give the due reverence, respect, and time to. But African spirituality isn't about coercion. So if you don't want to take part, that's absolutely fine. But if you do, then just follow as I share the information. Okay. But if you're not taking part, do please sit and listen and take and show the necessary respect to our way. Okay. So first one we're going to do is we're going to breathe together. Breathing is obviously vital to us, but breath spiritually is our link between the physical and the spiritual realm, and within ourselves. So that's the bridge. So what we're going to do is we're going to breathe together. I'll direct you, and just breathe with me. And the technique to fully breathe, and not where we breathe from our chest, but from our diaphragms, is that when we breathe out, we pull the stomach in, muscles in, that forces the air out of our stomachs, and then we relax those stomach muscles, and the air rushes in through our noses. And if you do this technique, you'll understand how different it is from what your normal breathing rate is. And this helps us be more centered and become calm, especially at these times. It's so important for our spiritual and mental health. But it also prevents us from where our enemies want us to be, which is to be reactive and emotional and animalistic. So we're going to breathe. We'll breathe together. Spirit tells me 3 times. 3, because that spiritually signifies coming into being, and which is the whole point of African spirituality, coming back to our right minds, into our right liberty. So if you wish to take part, feet flat on the floor, back straight, so your spine is straight, so your 7 energy centers are straight, hands on your thighs, and I'll count so we keep time in Kiss for Healing. So we breathe out, hold it, pull those stomach muscles in, relax stomach muscles, breathe in through the nose. Moja. We breathe out. And the stomach muscles in. Relax. Breathe in. Mbili. Breathe out. And the stomach's in. And relax. Breathe in. Tatu. Okay. And so now I'll continue. To change the energy or vibration, because we are just one vibration, the all is the vibration underpinning all things, and we are aspects of that vibration. We now thank the powers to ask that we have a closer connection with them, and they assist us in manifesting our objectives. And this is a very powerful ritual that we're doing, because we're invoking those energies, and we're invoking our connection to the all, and to the ancestors, and to the powers. So I'm going to ring the chime 3 times, again, to reinforce the energy that we began with breathing. So continue to breathe deeply, allow the vibration to go around you, through you, and over you, thereby bringing you into connection and resonance with the energy where you are. Then opening up your 3rd eye, so you have that connection, open up your consciousness to the all, the creator, and thereby we can connect with each other wherever we are in the world. So I'll begin, and again I'll count so we keep time. Moja. Sabili. Tatu. Now I continue with the ritual and the invocation. So this is a call and response. So we say together after each one that I call, Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. You can see on the screen, which means we are one or we are the same thing. A very powerful affirmation that we should all meditate upon. So I'll begin. Ninaomba ya muomba awote. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba ya nebacha. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Mamiwata, one of the Loa of Udon. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Now we go on to the Kemetic powers that underpin all reality and existence and aspects of the Creator. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Shu. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Tefnut. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Nut. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. And we go on to the Pautneteru, the Kemetic science for the development of the human psyche, so we become one with the all. Science, so Kemetic science, because physical things in the world are spirit that we can touch, and spirit is that science that we can't touch. It's that spirit. So this helps us, and we go from the lowest vibration to the highest vibration. Nina kanuni na nguvu ya Geb. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Alset. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Sebek. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Heteru. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Haru. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Herakuti. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Maat. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Saka. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Tahuti. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Ausa. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Amen. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Now we can go on to those ancestors who are in our direct bloodline, the ones we first should call. We called on the first ancestor, the All. Now we call on to those in our direct bloodline. I start with my mother. Ninaomba Ujume Kelly. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja.
Ninaomba Iceland Rattigan.
Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba Bibi or grandmother Ketra Reed. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja.
Ninaomba grandmother Louise and grandfather Sylvester.
Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja. And do there's any more ancestors in your direct line you wish to call? Okay. So now we can go on to
Yeah,
those
I
ancestors.
think Elder Pepper Kai wanted to.
Okay.
Hold on, you're muted. Yeah, go on. Elder Pepper Kai, come through.
Nyamba, grandmother Daisy, and grandfather Waldy.
The key to Kamoja.
Kamoja.
Okay. Okay. Something's got there. Stop sharing. Right. Main show. Can we put that back up on screen? Because I somehow. Can you see that on screen? Can you still see it on screen?
Yeah, it's still up.
Okay. All right. So. All right. I'm going to share my screen again. There we go. Okay. Apologies. Now we can go on. And the Pepper Kai, is there anyone else in your direct bloodline you wish to call?
Yes. Nyamba, Grandaunt Adassa.
Key to Kamoja.
Sisini.
Anyone else wish to call? Anyone in direct bloodline? No? Okay. So now we go on to those ancestors who are not in our direct bloodline, but who gave their time, their effort, their resources, their blood, their sweat, and their lives for our families, for our communities, our nation, and our race. Ninaomba Mzee, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Nyamba Patrice Lumumba.
Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba Ya Santua.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Nyamba Jack
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba Mzee Amawali Alhaj Malik Shabazz Malcolm X. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba Helen Satori Jata.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Go ahead.
Nyamba Harriet Tubman.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Nyamba Queen Mother Moore.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba wazee Amy Ashford Garvey na Amy Jacques Garvey.
Sisini
Kitu Kamoja.
Niniamba Winnie Mandela.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Okay. And ninaomba Mzee Nanabontu na Baba Tigel na Baba Berenge. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. And ninaomba Mzee inaomba wazee Vuza Mazulu Craig Umtwa na Sabonku Some na Craig na Max Bouvier. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Now we can give thanks and call upon those ancestors who we don't always know their names, but they left us a tremendous legacy. And those we first should call, we never and should never forget, as they're always waiting for us to call upon them, is those who died in the Mangamazi, and those who died, Fulton died in the Mangamazi. Ninaomba Mababu Ya Mangamazi. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba Mababu Ya Asian Revolution. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba Mababu Ya APLA, na SWAPO, na Freedom and Land Party, na Black Panthers. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba Mababu Ya Kemet, na Taseti, na Kush, na Nubia. Sisini Kitu
Sisini
Kimoja.
Kitu Kimoja.
Ninaomba mababu ya San na Twa na Hutu. Sisini Kitu Kimoja.
Kimoja.
Ninawaomba wanaishi ambao watatetea sisi na wale mababu ambao bado hawajazaliwa. Sisi ni Kitu Kimoja.
Kitu Kimoja.
And then we say in unison, you can just follow with me. And we say with this affirmation and these words of power, we say with power and feeling. Nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote.
Kwa watu wetu.
Kwa watu wetu.
Na mapenzi ya wote.
Na mapenzi
ya wote.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi
yetu.
All parts are people and the will of the all is our will. Asanteni sana.
Yeah, asante sana and Dugrimani.
Karibu, you're welcome.
Okay. Now I'll put up Vasco. Yeah, greetings, Brother Vasco.
Greetings, Brother Tahaka. Greetings, everyone.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay, now we'll start the presentation. And like I'm saying, the pandemic now has been with us since March. And in that time, a lot of things have happened. And of late, as we know, we have been told that a vaccine has been successfully tested and its rollout begins next week. So what we want to look at now, specifically in the African community, the Black community, is what's the best way forward for us? Because as we are told, the African community is one of the most that has been affected by this pandemic in terms of we have suffered disproportionately when we look at it in terms of our numbers. And I think we know why a lot of that is, because a lot of us work on frontline jobs and so forth. So we, are more susceptible in that sense. But I must say, there's also various schools of thought when it concerning this pandemic. So today we'll endeavor to look right across the board and hopefully reach a conclusion at the end in terms of the African community and what is the best way forward for us. So I'd like to welcome Elder Cecil, and I'll get each person to introduce themselves soon. We also have Elder Pepperkai, and of course we have Elder Vasco who have just arrived. And they'll be talking on specific areas. So I'll first go to Elder Cecil and then work my way around. Just a quick introduction about yourself.
Okay. Good evening, my brothers, and I'm sorry about the absence of sisters. No doubt there are many in our audience out there. So good evening to our viewers as well. Good to be with you. My name is Cecil Gutsmore, and I am longish in the tooth, and I'm trying to remain active. I have been a worker in various areas of life, including my last area of work with university teaching in Jamaica. And that's it.
Okay. And now we'll go on to Elder Pepperkai. Can you send us a brief introduction?
Yes, Pepperkai, one of the founder members of the Pan-African Congress movement, been active in the community for close to 50 years. One of my major activity is to ensure that books written by your people, for people, get distributed. So you could call me the bookman.
Okay, and finally, Elder Vasco, could you brief introduction to yourself as well.
Yes, Vasco Stevenson. Just to let you know that I celebrated my birthday yesterday. And I am not ashamed to tell you how old I was yesterday. I was actually 78 yesterday. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Congratulations.
And I've been into health now since the 1980s, really. And that is one of my major interests at the moment. But I also look at events behind the scenes. What's occurring behind what's going on in the world today? And even this morning on my radio program, I was presenting some information that is not, although it's available to the public, so many people are hooked up in mainstream, they don't go to alternative sources to get real information. They adhere to the propaganda. So I'm going to be talking, thanks to Brother Tahaka, about the COVID. I have very strong views and very strong opinions about it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to ameliorate those views and opinions, but my opinions have been shaped by what is actually going on behind the scenes.
Okay, that's good. So now we'd just like to open up the floor, and so who would like to start us off by this key topic in terms of, because today I've actually titled it Key to Combating the Pandemics. So as we can see, we've left it very, very wide so we can combat it from all angles. So,
Okay, Brother Tahaka, I'm going to kick off and get the controversy out of the way.
Okay.
Okay. And I will kick off by asking what pandemic? Okay, that's my first question. Let me read you something to begin with. And we are told that a vaccine is on its way. It will be available next week. We are also told the firm that allegedly has produced this miraculous vaccine in such a short period of time, literally in a matter of months. And we all know that vaccines take 10 to 15 years to develop. You have to have animal trials and human trials and all kinds of different things. And yet this vaccine has been made available in such a relatively short period of time. There is a video of Boris Johnson talking about this vaccine. The maker of this vaccine is Pfizer, working in conjunction with another firm called Moderna, which is a relatively new firm who have never produced anything at all. And yet they've come up with this fantastic vaccine in a short period of time. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson stated in a video interview, and I quote, "The virus will survive at minus 73 degrees. The virus, okay, he didn't say the vaccine. What he's talking about is a virus. And yet, in the opinion of myself and others, that was a Freudian slip. Okay? Why is Boris Johnson telling the population that a virus is going to survive if the temperature is 73 degrees, minus 73 degrees? Why is he talking about a virus when in actual fact he was meant to be talking about a vaccine? Yes? Okay. Let me quote from, before I begin to quote, Pfizer is the one are the makers of the vaccine that's being rolled out. A few weeks ago, the chief executive officer of Pfizer actually dumped 62% of his shares in that company. Now, if a company is about to roll out a vaccine that potentially can make that company billions and billions of dollars, ask yourself a simple question. Why is the chief executive officer dumping his holdings in that company? does not make sense. Okay, it just doesn't add up. In addition to that, we have a gentleman called Michael Yeadon, PhD, former vice president and chief scientific advisor of the same company, Pfizer, right? And this is what he said, and this information is only 3 days old. Very few people will need the vaccine, as the mortality rate is so low and the illness is clearly not causing excessive deaths. The two people associated with the company that's producing the vaccine that's being rolled out have both reacted quite negatively to the vaccine itself. So ask yourself a question why that is happening. And there are other scientists and doctors from around the globe who are coming out and saying there's no virus. What we had was a simple case of flu that has been politicized and put into the public domain. And the idea was to generate fear in the community. So the real vaccine, the real virus is the fear in the community that's locked everyone down and had a negative impact on people's immune systems and their psychological well-being. The deaths that are being reported now are people who are dying from heart attacks, diabetes, Alzheimer's, because they have not been getting treatments from the hospitals because the hospitals have been focusing on a non-existent virus. And really, the truth behind this is that the virus was an opportunity for those who want to introduce one world government, one world religion, one world everything, and a cashless society. It was an opportunity for them to try to roll out their nefarious plan. And that is what the virus is all about. However, if people get the flu, which is a seasonal thing, and with winter here now, some people will get the flu, although the evidence is showing that so far no flu has turned up, no regular annual flu. But to protect yourself, what you should be doing, of course, is taking vitamin C, zinc, coconut oil, vitamin D3, nitric oxide. And if you take those things, then your chances of even getting the flu are substantially reduced. Okay? And I would advise anyone to get out and about, take off the mask, get out and about, go into nature, walk in the park. If you can walk barefoot at this time of the year, I know it's a bit cold, put your bare feet on the ground, get some fresh air, do a bit of sun gazing. All of these things will not only benefit you physically, but psychologically. And take the ready mask off your face because the evidence shows that they don't work. And both these men, who are top executives at Pfizer, have actually come out and said it. And lots of other doctors and scientists are saying it now. They're coming out in their droves and saying this whole planet was a scheme to bring in the new world government, the new world order. And they are now even rebranding themselves and talking about something called the Great Reset.
Okay, at this point, Vasco, I'd like to open it up. So,
okay,
from what you have said so far, Elder Pepperkai or Elder Cecil, what's your reply or what line would you take?
After Brother Pete.
I can't hear you, brother.
Hold on, it's
Unmute,
muted.
unmute.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's all right. You're unmuted.
First, let me say that I have no scientific background. I don't work in the scientific industry. My concern is what I see as a great threat facing our people. But in the 70s, Henry Kissinger, who was the Secretary of State under the Carter government, in a memorandum article says that they must do everything to ensure that the global population does not go beyond 6 billion.
Billion.
And he said, it's 6 billion. He said that war could reduce the population quite
So you
considerably.
seem to be frozen. I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me?
We
Yeah,
can
I'm
see
hearing
you. Yeah, we can. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can hear you fine.
He said war
Well, I can hear you.
could reduce the population significantly, but it's too messy. He said that
I can't hear anything from your end.
Well, we can hear you. Can you hear me, Vasco? Can you hear me? Hello?
there's something wrong with it. At his
Yeah,
end.
yeah. It's at his end. Yeah, let's carry on.
Yeah.
We will try and
And
so.
he said that we have to come up.
No, you're breaking up. Can't hear a word you're saying.
All right, carry on. I'll try and talk to him.
He said that you have to come up with a means as how to reduce the population, because we have surplus population and wasteful eaters. And of course, he was pointing to Africa. Now, we who have all the resources that everybody else wants and don't want to pay for it, get the least benefit of it. And here is somebody in a powerful position referring to us as wasteful eaters and surplus population. So when Professor Sally came here in Britain and was promoting his Marandina substance, I was very much involved in that campaign, because at that time, AIDS was a serious threat on us as African people, particularly on the African continent. And what they were saying then is that if you catch AIDS, that would be the end of you. They wasn't even talking about any kind of treatment. And it was Professor Sally who was talking about his Marandina that will greatly arrest this disease as AIDS. And much later, they was talking about medication. But initially, it was about a death sentence. Now, we learned at the time that AIDS started off within the gay community in California. Then we heard that it was rampant in Haiti, and it came from us. And then we hear that it come from Green Monkey in Africa. Now, when we look at this kind of a threat, we know that virus, disease can be weaponized. And the first evidence that is very, very clear in front of us is when European enter the Americas and declare a war of genocide on the native people here, one thing was very evident, that the immune system of the native people could not withstand the disease that Europeans brought to that continent. But further to that, once the Europeans see that the indigenous people immune system could not fight off these new diseases that they brought, they decided to use those diseases as a weapon and infect them with blankets and kill off a whole heap of our people. Now, it's evidently clear that they haven't stopped there. That biological weapon is always there.
Mhm.
So when we hear about a virus that surfaced in a place called Wuhan in China and is going around the world, become a serious threat, and was told that it originated out of a wet market because Chinese people love to eat bat, and it jumped from animal to human, and it created a serious health crisis. The question we have to ask ourselves, what is this virus? How did it come about? Is it natural? And was it something natural and weaponized? Or was it manufactured to begin with? Because we heard about the military Olympics. I've never heard of that before. And there was what they call this military Olympics, where US military people was in China in what they was engaged with. We also learned that this virus start off with some university in the States that was linked with one in Wuhan. All these we need to look into and find out what the hell is going on. But one thing we know for sure is that very early we were predicted to be lamb to the slaughter of this virus. And so far, and I said so far, the level of devastation that was projected is not happening to us in Africa and the Caribbean.
Mhm.
It's happening, but not at the scale that was projected. Except for one country in Africa, and that's South Africa. And it's interesting because Brother Bini is a senior member of the Pan-African Congress movement, visited South Africa at one point, and when he came back, he was very alarmed of the food that our people in South Africa was consuming. A lot of GM food. Bini said he's never seen so much different color of drinks, pink, orange, blue, green. He said he couldn't believe it. And South Africa is like Europe in Africa. And they're heavily in GM. Because one of the things I didn't know is that the population of Tanzania is almost the same as South Africa. And that South Africa have a far greater population than Tanzania. But we're lucky that in Tanzania, we have a sensible president who doesn't take the dictates of Europe, who try to do the best he can for the population of Tanzania and set a good example for the world.
Oh, jeez.
When they have in the parliament, you don't see anybody with masks, and nobody is dying like flies in Tanzania. And Tanzania was one of the countries that once they realized that their sister country, Madagascar, has come up with a treatment, they said, we're going to try some of this. Because if it's doing good for you, you do good for us. And although the WHO come down heavy on them and said they should fall in line, they said, no, this is Tanzania. I'm the president here, and I'm here for the interest of the people. And I'm glad that he's still alive, because man like him don't stay alive for too long, because they're in the way of the European agenda. But just to finish off, I'm saying that this idea, as Vasquez point out, vaccine takes a long time before it's come on the market. From the point of the research, the testing, and as I said, I'm not a scientist and I don't have all the knowledge. But what they're saying is that this approach that these vaccine manufacturers are coming out with does not follow the path of how vaccine is normally developed. For example, they'll get some of the infected material, clone that, and put it back, and that's supposed to become the barrier. They're using something completely different, which hasn't been tested, never been tested before. And there's this great rush to enforce it on the defenseless population. And what they use again is a fear tactic, is that it's still out of people and we have to do something. We can't hang about. It's a desperate measure and we have to go along with it. Now, what if this vaccine that they roll out, they had it a long time? What if their body as European are different from ours in terms of how it functions and would be more greatly affected by this vaccine more than they can? What if, as I said, there's two different types of vaccine? We don't know which is which. It comes in a vial. We're not the one packaging it. We're not the one making it. And also, the one that they're planning to roll out, it has to be kept at a certain temperature. By then, load it in a plane, going to a hot country from which most of us come from. Do they have the facility to store it to keep that temperature? How do they move it up and down the place? And let us say now, the result of this is disastrous. They could have always said, well, it's those people careless because they did not apply it and look after it the way we recommend. So I'm saying that we're ill prepared because even scientists, African scientists who are working for this company, you have to toe the line. They're not going to lose a job and come and make public statement about how dangerous this thing is. So, as I said, we aren't prepared. Oh, I forget to mention the Tuskegee experiment. That is not what do you call it? It's not what the term is conspiracy theory. It's a fact. It happened. And they were supposed to be treating African men, and instead of treating them, they was giving them this disease and see how they feel. So I'm saying that we are ill-prepared, unprotected, and face a great danger. And we should let all the government, European government, they should take the vaccine. And if nothing happens to them in 5 years, we could look into it. Until that time, we should have nothing to do with it. I'll stop there for now.
Okay. And now, Elder Cecil.
Okay. Thank you, my brother. This matter of this pandemic, when it hit, and it's been around certainly since November or December of last year. It hit first in China. There are issues about whether it came out of a laboratory in Wuhan or a wet market in Wuhan. I think that had it come from a laboratory, a great deal more would have been understood about it than turns out to be the case. So for me, the smart money as to how it came into the human population should be on the wet market. What worries me is how we've reacted to it. We, as humanity, have reacted to it. Whatever it is, the people in East Asia seem to have developed very good methods of dealing with it, and the claimed death rates there have been remarkably low. Even the infection rates in East Asia, China, Korea, etc., have been remarkably low. So there's a lesson there, whatever it is. Now, I set about, as soon as this thing emerged, or appeared to be emerging, to try to understand what was happening. I used both alternative sources and mainstream sources. I'm not amongst the people who believe that mainstream tell lies and that alternatives tell the truth, but we leave that to one side for the moment. I tried to understand what was happening. I'm still trying to understand what was happening. Our community responded by initially saying that this was a virus targeted at us, and on a radio program that I'm on, somebody talked about it as a weapon of mass destruction. Turns out that if it's a weapon of mass destruction, it hasn't yet, as Brother Pepekai said, impacted African communities, either in the Caribbean or in continental Africa, although it has impacted Africans in Brazil on a significant scale, and has impacted Africans in the United States on a large scale. So the first thing is, why didn't it impact Africans in the Caribbean and in continental Africa? My view is, and there's evidence for this, that this virus, if virus it be, was transported out of China directly to the places where China has regular, relatively large-scale direct communication. And that was to the metropoles and not to the Caribbean and not to many places in Africa, certainly not to Tanzania and certainly not to Madagascar and not to any of the African countries. And that, it seems to me, is what explains why this epidemic, this word pandemic is a buzz panic word. I've never particularly accepted the notion pandemic, although I see how it's used. So the reason it hasn't impacted on in Africa is that the main transmission belt, which was aircraft directly from China and especially from Wuhan, wasn't happening to the countries that we come from. That's the explanation. It impacted in Europe, and you can look at the United States of America, and you can look at flights from China. There is evidence for this. There's an important article that came out of Reuters, which looked at the aircraft flights out of China at the time, the ones that were coming from Wuhan and so on. So that's the explanation. I don't believe that being so, and I believe that our leaders should have understood this in Africa and in the Caribbean. There was no need for any lockdown. There was no need for most of the measures that they tried to impose there. Just as in fact, there was not any need for what has been happening here. Let's assume that this is a real pandemic. in the face of a pandemic, the questions that you ask include how infectious it is, what is the mortality rate? Those are crucial questions. And I've known that since I was a little boy in Jamaica when, what was it? Polio hit. I would have been, I'm only 2 or 3 years, it turns out, younger than Brother Vasco. So I remember when polio hit, and I remember the panic. And I remember that very few people died. I remember that only most of the victims were maimed. And so for me, the question was, if there's a threat of a pandemic or a disease of some kind, how many people is it likely to kill? How many people is it likely to maim? And already on the Chinese evidence, it killed, and it even infected a very small proportion of the population, and it killed only a very small proportion of those infected. That means there's no reason to ruin any economy in order to protect people. What you needed to do was protect the vulnerable, and we learned very early who were vulnerable. Oldish people, sick people, those were the vulnerable. In places like here, Canada, Australia, I've checked, and the United States, it now turns out, the most vulnerable were the least well protected. Indeed, care homes that have absolutely no medical services inside of them at all were places where thousands of people in Britain, at least 25,000 people, and into those care homes, government talking about protecting the National Health Service was putting people out of hospitals into care homes where there's no treatment whatsoever. There were issues about what kind of treatment was to be given. I think it was learned, and they're still learning, how this disease impacts. They thought that anybody who was appeared to be short of oxygen, that what you needed to do, give them maximum oxygen, and the maximum way of giving oxygen is a ventilator. If you're ill enough to need a ventilator and they put you on a ventilator, there's a high chance that you won't come back. It is now fairly understood that that what looked like a breathing problem isn't a breathing problem at all, that other things are happening in the body, and that this virus takes the body apart in a completely different way to what was first understood. So mistakes have been made there, and mistakes are still being made. The country in which we live is run by incompetence. That's why they've left the EU. They begged to go in it. They instead of telling their people how much benefits they were getting, they told their people that they were suffering from being in the EU. Anyway, let me not talk about that. The point I'm making is that the people who run this place are idiots. In 2009, the then government, it doesn't matter that it was a Labour government, any government, they did an analysis of what the threats are that are faced by the nation. And they decided that a pandemic that arose from a virus for which there was as yet no protection was the main threat to the nation. And the decision that they took was to set up a bank of PPE, as personal protective equipment. It was actually put into place, and the Tory government didn't maintain it. So when there came a pandemic that there was no protection against, all of their equipment was out of date. And they rushed around like headless chickens, buying stuff that didn't work from Turkey, telling the country that they were mobilizing the army to distribute stuff that was out of date and so on. So there has been amazing stupidity and folly in this particular case in relation to this thing. Let me get back to how we in our community have dealt with it. The first proposition was, this is something that either Chinese or Americans or white people have designed to kill us. What we know is that those of us living in the places into which the virus arrived, do die in disproportionate numbers for reasons that have already been given, because we work in places where we're unprotected or because we have health challenges. So that's why we've died in big numbers in the United States and here and wherever else. Now, so it wasn't a pandemic directed at us, as has been suggested by people that I love and respect. All right. So not a pandemic in that sense. The next thing that I heard, or not necessarily the next thing, but another thing that I heard was that this vaccine would have embedded in it, or has embedded in it, a feature that would make our bodies available to be communicated with from outside against our will. I don't say that that is impossible. What I do say is that there was never any evidence that any such feature was being put into the vaccines that were being made. An argument against the vaccine has been put on this program is that the vaccine has been developed very quickly. There's a reason for that. The reason for that is that this is a different vaccine from previous vaccines, and that raises the question about whether it's the nature of the difference and whether that difference makes it inherently dangerous, and if it's inherently dangerous, how inherently dangerous is it? So, without being, just like Brother Pepperkai, a scientist, and probably nobody else on the panel is either, I heard a woman on BBC Radio 4 on a program that they have called Alive Scientific, just happened to be somebody who was involved in producing the Oxford vaccine. Listening to her, it was clear that for this one, they weren't going down the traditional route, that they decided very early that mRNA was going to be the mechanism by which this particular pandemic was tackled. And the scientific evidence as to the nature of the virus was learned pretty early. And so they were able to set up, from within months of this thing being first discovered, declared, they were able to start producing this vaccine because it's not the traditional type. And testing has been done. I don't know how safe it is, but it is not true that it hasn't been tested. I hear arguments from all kinds of people about why they would be putting any vaccine into healthy people. In fact, that's how vaccines work. You protect populations who are vulnerable, who live in a certain disease area and so on, from that disease by the use of vaccines. So generally speaking, it's healthy, potentially threatened populations that get vaccines. That's a principle. And it's simply not true to say that there is something particularly dangerous and deadly about the fact that this one might be given to a healthy population. So now people have finally got round to an actually good argument about the vaccine. The one that is untested is not a good argument. The one that they are using a new technology for a vaccine is an important argument that we have to watch. I'm not particularly impressed by the fact that Kennedy is on air in the alternative area, saying how dangerous this is, and that it's a new type of manipulation of our bodies. I did hear on social media an African brother who clearly is a med scientist of some kind talking about exactly that point. And he was not expressing the view that it is a dangerous transformation of our bodies if we choose to take it in the way that Mr. Kennedy has asserted very impressively, but it seems to me almost certainly wrongly. It seems to me that we have lost or not yet developed a capacity to read alternative information with any care or proper discernment. And to the extent that that is true, we are in danger of misreading and believing all kinds of stuff that's either not true or dangerous or misleading. I do not believe that there is any evidence that this pandemic was designed, as has been suggested on this program, by some dark set of forces that are intent on world government, on one world religion, and one world anything else. Amongst the arguments that I heard from within our community on the way is that one of the things that these dark forces aim at was to get rid of cash. I recall that while I was living back in Jamaica, and I lived back there from 97 to 2009, that Rastafari brethren and sistren in Jamaica over that period were refusing to touch money, cash. They said that is a main communicator of disease. And it seems to me that if we're arriving in a moment where cash use gets diminished, one of the ways in which we spread diseases amongst ourselves is likely to be somewhat, if not completely eliminated, at least reduced. So I don't see the objection to the reduction in cash use. It inconveniences poor people who don't have cards and bank accounts and all of that stuff, but there's no big argument in favor of cash that I've come across. So the long and the short of it is that we need to be careful about how we understand these issues and these events. There is a virus. It is real. It is killing people. The only good thing about it is that it's nothing like as deadly as it's being thought to be. And the reason it isn't anything like as deadly as it's being declared to be is because even if it kills 1 million people, which it might well do, that's far less people that were killed by the flu after the First World War, which killed, I don't know the figures, 3 million, enough people, many more than this one is doing. As it happens, the world population now is much larger than it was at that time. So it's impacting a minuscule proportion of the human population. Now, obviously, every death is terrible. And I know 1 or 2 people who have died. People of my age, people who are younger have also died. So people are dying. But this is not a disease that kills proportionately and numerically or, large numbers of people. So 1 million people is not a large proportion of the human population. The Black Death, some centuries ago, killed in Europe 1/3 to 1/2 sometimes of populations of whole countries. This is nothing like that, right? And they survived and they didn't lock down the economy then. So why do that now? So there's no argument for the lockdowns that they're doing. That I'm listening to our brothers about what can be done by way of safety. I'm sure that there is something in the health, natural products and so on that are being recommended. For me, I wear a mask. And one of the things is that this winter, I'm not taking any flu virus, because I think if you're wearing a mask, you're quite likely to be protected from the flu that's out there when you're traveling amongst fewer number of people. So the masks matter, and I think that people should wear them. Those East Asian countries have been wearing masks for the longest while, both because of unhealthy air, but also because it stops the spread of disease. And this disease hasn't spread in those parts of the world, in part because their populations are already wearing masks. We should identify and try to protect the vulnerable. One of the things that hasn't happened here, and this is repetition, is that old people in care homes were not just not protected, they were deliberately almost killed off. And I don't know whether that was part of the plan. I heard the argument made in that way. So identify and protect the vulnerable. Wear masks. All of the stuff about washing hands and so on makes sense. It certainly can't do any harm. What else can I say? There may be more to say, but we've got almost 45 minutes still to run. So let's see what further is said.
Okay, everybody has spoken, and it's interesting that the divergent views we have on some points. So I'll just try to bring up or home in on a point. And the point is, okay, Vasco said the virus doesn't exist. As we know, Cecil says it does. Now, my question is, but Cecil said, even if it exists, it is nowhere near as, you can say, dangerous than we have been led. So my question is then, why do you think, especially the Western economies, have dealt themselves a tremendous economic blow by doing what they've done? Millions of people are now out of work and are suffering, and all kind of manner of things are happening, losing their jobs, losing their homes, all kind of. So what do you think they're thinking then? If what you believe and what you have said, why do you think governments like that then would go to that extent to vertically shut down their economies?
I think it's stupidity and overreaction, frankly. And the alternative explanation, which is that it happened so that drug companies can make money. And I heard one sister on a program that I shared with saying that the purpose was to, for example, save money by closing down. Almost Vasco was making this point, but not in that way, that the doctors effectively ran away from the hospitals, and only doctors who were working on COVID and people in the hospitals who were working directly on COVID-19 patients remained active. And it obviously therefore increased the deaths amongst people who were suffering from other serious illnesses. So that is undoubtedly true. But anybody who thinks that any saving was made by any of the states that have brought about lockdown just don't understand what has really happened. My view is that they panicked, and I say that they're not particularly clever anyway. I looked, for example, in a piece that I wrote as part of trying to understand what was happening, at how various people were responding to this thing. I looked at how our people in social media were responding. I looked at how the scientists were responding. And there's perfect evidence of total confusion. It's very clear from the Reuters report about the level of confusion amongst the scientific advisors in the UK. It's also clear that the journalists were up, the white journalists, official media, were up the pole. For example, at the point where it might have made sense to have a brief lockdown in northern Italy or in Britain, what the journalists were saying was that is something that the Chinese had done. In fact, the Chinese had done it. It's been a big province, so it's wholly for people. There's a very small area of China that was locked down. The rest of China wasn't locked down at all. So there's no lockdown of the Chinese economy or any other East Asian thing. So, having misread, including being misguided by their scientists about what was happening, the moment when their scientists were telling them that many, many, many more people are going to be infected than were, and that many, many more people were going to die than have died, right? So Boris Johnson and them was getting idiotic advice from their scientists, the men who were supposed to be able to interpret this kind of information. And then the journalists were telling them that you can't lock down. That is something that the Chinese did. They're able to get away with it because they are authoritarian societies and communist societies. We can't do that. And so, right. And another thing is, and we know this for a fact, Boris Johnson didn't begin even to try to understand what was happening. He didn't go to, and there's a committee that discusses these matters called COBRA. He didn't go to any of those meetings. He sent Cummings, and Cummings went to all of the meetings and went back and probably told Boris quite rightly that the scientists are up the pole, because they were, right? And between Boris not caring and not understanding, and the best journalists in England telling them that we can't lock down because that is a communist authoritarian thing to do, they locked down late, they locked down longer than they needed to, and they panicked. Wholly people can no longer handle death. If we go back to the societies out of which we came, or to 19th century society, people died and everybody knew about death and dying. The white West especially no longer understands death and they panic around it. And that is
hold
what
on. But you're still not answering the question or getting the point.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an ulterior motive for locking down? All right.
Yes, there is.
Hold on.
Yes, there is. There is a massive. Hold on. You've had your say, Cecil. Let me come in and say something.
All right, Cecil, pass it around a bit. Let others.
Let me come in and say something. When you started off your presentation, unfortunately, my thing went down a little bit, and I had to come back on. I didn't full get everything you said, but when I came back on, you were making some very valid points with which I was in total agreement. But to say certain things that you have said, let me be quite frank, they don't sit well with me, and they don't tally with what other experts have been saying. Case in point, look at Dr. Lorraine Day, a virologist, and she has over the past couple of days stated quite categorically, there are lots of people who are having the swab up their nostrils, but what they don't realize is that the vaccine is actually in the swab itself as well. Okay, all of that is being played out. Now, you talked about about Robert Kennedy. Robert Kennedy is not anti-vaccine. He is anti what is happening now. And there is a far bigger agenda, whether you believe it or not, it's there and it's in play. There's a far bigger agenda to wipe out a large proportion of the human population, including people of color like you and me. And that is at play at the moment. And I tell you one thing, whether you believe it or not, there is a new world order trying to kick in with one world army, one world religion, one world digital currency, and running parallel to that and fighting against it is something called GESARA. I would suggest you go and study just NESARA and GESARA, which will take the place of this new world order, one government and all of that. That's the battle that's being fought. And that will tell you why certain senior people, scientists, doctors, and everybody are now becoming bold enough to come out and say and tell you what's going on behind the scenes. Whether you believe in alternative news or not, immaterial. The fact is that the propaganda from the mainstream is exactly what it is. Propaganda, that's all it is. And I take up some of these newspapers and I look at them and I say to myself, Christ, They can't be putting this thing in the public domain. And I'll tell you something else that's happening at the moment, right? This election that is taking place in the United States.
Yeah, I think,
of
hold
America.
on. I know this.
No, it has to do with COVID.
Vasco,
It has to do with COVID.
Vasco. We came here, we discussed this behind the scenes, and we came here to specifically home in because there's people watching this, right? There's people now, the vaccine is going to be rolled out next week. There's people out there wondering what to do. And I think we're spreading more confusion. We're going to leave this with more confusion. Hold on.
No.
The idea was to come here and be more practical and be more straightforward. For instance, we talked about the immune system, and that was supposed to be your brief, to look more at the immune system and advise people what they could do to strengthen their immune system.
Which I did.
Otherwise, we'll go straight off topic and we go straight into the conspiracy theory, which we have had debates about that already on this channel earlier in the pandemic. And we'll just lose the whole thread, and we're going to be disciplined with ourselves and stick to what we said we were here to do. Otherwise, we were bringing in all manner of things. And then what's going to happen? People are going to leave none the wiser. What we want to see now, as one brother suggested here, I put the clip up earlier when I said, why do you think governments, Western governments, would basically lock down their economies so aggressively, knowing the damage is being caused, knowing the damage that's being caused to their citizens? And there's only one person that came and says, basically it's a capitalistic exercise because there's a lot of people stand to make a lot of money out of taking that approach. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to go around. Do you think the vaccine exists? Vasco?
Not as we think.
No.
Not as we think it does.
Right.
And at the moment, so the vaccine. You said the vaccine or
the virus.
No, not as we think it did.
Right.
There's no virus going around.
Cecil.
My view is yes, and that there's good scientific evidence for its existence in exactly the way that it existed as a virus. Yes.
No virus.
Pepper Kai.
What I'm not sure about is...
No. Hold on. Let's stick to the thing first. Do you think the thing exists?
That's what I'm talking about.
No. Let's get to the points because people are watching. And in order for us to go forward, we need to know where we're all coming from. I think it exists. I declare my hand. I think something exists, whether you call it a COVID or whether you call it, there's something out there killing people. Whether it was man-made or whether it came about naturally or whatever way it came about, I believe something exists, something is killing people. But that's my belief. What do you believe?
Well, I believe that there is something out there. But my question is...
All right. We'll go on to that next. We'll go on to that next. Just to clarify the point. So 3 people believe something tangible exists that's actively killing people. 1 person said no virus. Okay. So from there, at least we have an understanding. We can go further. So my question is, of course, Vasco don't believe it exists. So in that case...
Not at the moment, Brother Pepper. Not at the moment, Brother Tahako. A flu existed initially, but at the moment, no COVID virus exists.
Right. So why is the death rate increasing? In many, the death rate is increasing faster now than it was in, say, March and April. Why is that? You see, what I'm saying, people are watching us. People are looking for, so it's pointless. People got to be more to the point.
My answer to that, Brother Talker, is that
Right.
Who's doing the count?
Good,
And
good,
people are
good
dying.
thing.
What is killing them? That's what we need to know. Because all we're hearing is this
All right.
frightening figures. How many people are dying? Hold on, hear me out. And I see that has to raise up the fright. And then behind it, we must have the
All right,
vaccine. Only the vaccine.
The reason I ask
is
that,
stable.
I've got a
Yeah.
father in his 80s. Now, what should I tell him? Take the vaccine or don't take it?
I would say find every means to strengthen his immune
Right.
system, but don't
What
take
about
the
you,
vaccine.
Cecil? Is
That
it
would be
something
my
that we should be taking or
recommendation.
just point blank refuse?
There's only one thing about the vaccine that I don't quite understand. And I'm not scared, but don't understand yet. This thing that young Kennedy, he's not young anymore, this mRNA, that aspect of the vaccine is new, and it clearly is engineered in a completely different way from previous vaccines, really completely. And to be honest, I don't yet understand that because the information around it is new, and whether using this particular machinery for making a vaccine has actually been effectively addressed in the scientific world. I don't know. I haven't seen the literature, and not enough people are addressing that one. I don't take Kennedy's warning about its nature and its danger at face value, but there is a concern that I have about this. Oddly enough, it seems that the reason they were able to move so quickly on this is precisely because they went for this new technology, focusing on using
the RNA, basically. RNA
yeah,
instead of the
as
usual,
the main thing. There are other vaccines coming up. In fact, 2 have been declared since the Pfizer one, and the Oxford one is not far behind. All of those are stored at a lower temperature, and some of them will almost be at room temperature. I don't understand why they have gone for this expensive and hard to store and hard to distribute first vaccine, and I would recommend against that one.
Okay, so basically what we are saying, we are still to be convinced by the information the authorities have put out so far. They haven't been convincing enough people that, I mean, that's my view from what I'm seeing. When Biden came out and said he will not make it mandatory, it will be voluntary.
I don't think there's much of a question, right? Some of the arguments have been around mandatory or not mandatory. No state has yet said that they're going to make it mandatory, and they're going to have massive reaction from their populations. I'm talking about the white countries here, if they try to impose it on a mandatory basis. I think they're going to avoid that.
2 points I want to make, Brother
Yeah.
Doc. Early on, Vasco said that Madeira, one of the vaccine manufacturers with Pfizer, has never put one on the market. They're new in this vaccine business. But none of us mentioned that Pfizer, whose vaccine they want to roll out, is one of the worst performing vaccine manufacturers. You know how many people they've damaged and who want to sue them. Also, the other point is this, that they have coverage that then nobody can take liability on them. They have a license, so if anything goes wrong, they cannot be held responsible. Also, I've seen a situation in India where Indian vaccine manufacturer are taking someone who was involved in a trial who claimed that he was injured in the trial, and the vaccine manufacturer are putting a heavy, stiff lawsuit against that person. Now,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
come back to the other point about mandatory. I've heard Barry said Britain government will not make the vaccine mandatory. That's what he says now. But he did not say that industry, workplace, other agency cannot make it mandatory. He didn't say that because one airline, Qantas, they're based in Australia, but they fly all over the place. Their chief executive is saying nobody's coming on their plane unless they have a vaccine certificate.
Hmm.
We know as well that I have a brother recently went to Ghana and he had to pay for his,
Yes, it costs £150.
he had to be tested. He
Yeah.
wasn't able to get on the plane
Yeah.
without having a certificate to show.
Yeah.
I spoke to a lot of people, and all the people I spoke, they said, I will not take any vaccine. But
Okay.
one moment.
Okay. All right. Faster is back. That's good. Just before I bring you in, there's quite a few points coming up, and we can address some of them. And one of this says, if this was a genuine emergency, they would be working together. The fact competition is playing a part, that's a good point. Showing me that this is not a central threat to humanity. That's true. There's a competition going on. Who can get there first? Britain said they're going to roll it out next week. Even Fauci have criticized that decision. Why the rush? And basically, you can see it was a kind of a jingoistic thing there first. So, we've got to take all these things into consideration. There's one just come up here that they've heard that Denmark has reversed legislation to make taking the vaccine mandatory. This was not reported outside of the country. So here we've got a case, Denmark, which has now made it mandatory. And the other thing, as Pepper Kyle was alluding to, even if you don't take it, your ability to travel and do many things will be restricted. As we are seeing, airlines, Qantas has already says, if you don't take it, you will not be allowed to travel on their planes.
I think it's important to separate taking a test, which is what's being talked about, from taking a vaccine. The airlines are insisting or trying to insist because it's in their economic interest. They're one of the economic entities that's been hit very hard. We now know, and we've known all along, that it doesn't work because the tests aren't reliable. There's a case of a cruise ship that insisted on tests before the people came on, and it traveled, I think, to Barbados, and whole heap of people on the ship who had been tested before going on turned out to have COVID-19. The tests are not particularly reliable.
And it's just, and they're now become a money-making exercise. I said they've now become a money-making exercise because I think this country charged £150 to take a test.
Yes.
Say you're going to Ghana. When you get there, you've got to take another test. Also costing $150. So you can see there's an incentive there to make money.
Yeah.
So hence that's why the brother brought about this capitalistic vulturism behind a lot of what's happening also.
No, that's not right. It's important also to separate original intention from accidental occurrences. Now, clearly, if airlines feel menaced and want to pretend that they can fly people safely, one of the ways in which they do it is that they find a mechanism like a test. The test turns out to be unsafe, but that doesn't matter. And if somebody can charge for the test, that's okay. And at the Ghana end, the reason there's a test there, the reason that there's a test there is that somebody feels that they're making the country safe by having a test at the airport.
Yeah.
And it costs money.
Yeah, but it's the cost that is in question.
Yeah,
Why,
but I know
why such a high cost? It's an opportunity to make money, you know. So okay,
it
so
probably wouldn't be worth doing if it didn't make somebody some money.
that's true. So I think it's a pity Vasco's dropped out again because I wanted to. Hopefully, he'll be back. But like I'm saying, that's where we've reached. We could talk around it, which we all know that the speculation that it came out of China, it came from bats. But right now, we've got to be more focused because right now it's here,
Yeah.
right? Your doctor's surgery, your whatever will be contacting you soon, asking you to come in to take it. Now, that's what a lot of people are faced with. They're faced with that thing now. Or their loved ones are going to be saying, right, I've got a mother or father in a nursing home. Now, what do you think? I haven't checked anything out, but say, for instance, you have a relative in a nursing home. Could you object to them being given the vaccine since it's not mandatory?
Well,
You see,
Personally, no.
people are looking for.
Personally, no, I wouldn't.
Okay.
okay. Now, here's the situation. You could say you don't want your relative who's into a care home to be vaccinated. And if the care home put that as a requirement, they could say, well, take your relative out of here. Yeah, either they have the vaccine or you have to take them out. Maybe you go to another nursing home and say, do you have a vaccine? No, don't come here. The point I was going up to is on this very same point, that we could face a situation where we've been corralled into this vaccine because you cannot go on a transport, you can't go into a shop, you can't go to your workplace. What do?
That's it.
Some of us don't even have a window box to grow one tomato plant. Where would you get food? Where would you eat? Threat is very real, it's very serious, and we're into a situation we literally find ourselves in a hopeless condition because although at the moment it's not mandatory, but we've been corralled into a mandatory position. That's how I'm seeing it.
Well, that's exactly how I see it as well. That's precisely what I'm trying to say. It's easy to say it's not mandatory, but you make the conditions so draconian that people are having inability to move and get on with their lives unless they take it. So the pressure is put on you that most people are going to say, well, I need to travel, I need to go there, so I'm just going to take it.
Yes.
You know, or what we have been noticing, which most of the press haven't been reporting, every weekend in London, there's been mass demonstrations taking place with people in opposition to what's going on. And there's been a news blackout. So do you think the African community now, as a solution, should be looking to mobilize en masse to make their views clear, to say, if they decide not to take it, we will not take it, and pressure be brought on the government to an extent that, and on other places such as airlines, by saying, okay, you won't let us go and we'll boycott the airlines. Do you think such a direction should begin to be looked at? Now, Vasco is back, so it's only fair for me now to bring him in. Sorry,
Yes,
Vasco,
I'm sorry. This just
you're
keeps
back.
dropping in and dropping out. I don't
Yeah.
know why. I'm connected, and that's what it says. So
Okay, since you're here then, you missed a bit, but we've basically been going through some of the questions and points raised.
Okay.
So from what you heard before you dropped out, what would you say from what you have heard so far?
The long and short of it, in my opinion, and from what I've read from people in the alternative media, who I believe, because they're highly connected people, the so-called COVID was an opportunity for what Cecil, with all respect to him, described as dark forces who have been living under their control for several centuries now. And it's time they thought they would initiate their one world government, which they have planned from 1776. Okay? And what is happening in the world now is that they have taken advantage of the COVID to try to initiate that program, to bring it to a conclusion. One world government, one world army, etc. Running parallel to that is the alliance or the White Hats. And it seems as though I'm going to be dropping out again any minute.
All right, let's carry on.
Oh my God.
It's just one of those
I think I'm
days.
being spied on.
Yeah, they don't want you to.
Every time I mentioned this,
Well,
have to
as
check
we are
mine.
well aware, just to say, as we are well aware, being on platforms like this and discussing what we are discussing, it won't be surprising if we start to have some, technical difficulties and dropping out and stuff, because we know that most of the social media have decreed that if they've set up such algorithm, if they come across certain terms, put it down. So we know there's an active attempt to, to silence people. So carry on. Oh, you're frozen. You see? Somebody don't want him to say. All right, he's frozen. Yeah, what? Yeah, Pepper Kai was saying something?
Yeah, trying to remember what I wanted to say. Oh, yeah. The point you made, Brother Darko, those recommendations. Sad, we should have been doing that, but we haven't. And yes, you're so right that the number of white people around the world, in Europe, who's not taking this line down. And we need, late as it is, to get onto the case. In fact, I see a well-written letter that somebody has put together, and we should be sending to MP, and we haven't done that. So I'm saying, by any means necessary, but we should not be in this silence, indifference, do nothing situation. We should do as much as we can and work for the best, but sitting down and doing nothing is not an option. We should definitely be screaming from the rooftop, opposition, because the fact that vaccine in itself is dangerous and have all kind of nasty effect, but the route that they're going down has not been tried before, and we need to understand what is that route and what danger lies behind it. Because, for example, the term MNR is mentioned. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what that means. So we need to inform ourselves. We need to investigate. We're getting too damn lazy. We're too dependent upon others. We need to be doing our investigation and to understand what it is that we face and how to deal with it.
All right, there's a good point here from what we mentioned before. We're talking about making things mandatory. And like I said, Qantas came out and said, if you do not take the vaccine, you cannot fly in their planes. And here it is saying within days of them making that announcement, because of the backlash that came about, they have retracted what they said. So you see, pressure can have an effect.
Of course, definitely
You
so.
see?
Definitely, sir.
You see, so that's a good example of basically people power. That people would have refused to fly in their planes unless they've done that.
And most
So-
important, in the talk up, we should say to Boris and the opposition and all his cabinet and all his MP, they should lead by example. Let them take the vaccine. That should
Well,
be
that's true.
That's-
Well, I've seen in many of those news briefings when journalists ask questions.
yes.
Quite a few journalists have put it to those scientists. Well, are you willing to take it first? And you know what they say? Because I'm not in that age bracket or that category, what is being rolled out first. Obviously, I can't. But if I was, I would have. So they got that. Yeah. Yes, Cecil. Are you muted? I'm not. Oh yeah, you're muted. Okay, yeah, you gotta unmute yourself. You're muted. It's still muted. Nah, just press.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put it now.
Right.
Okay. The problem is with what Brother Epikai was calling what if. One of his what ifs runs into the trouble of saying that MPs or whoever should take it first, because what if they're taking a safe version or even a placebo? Yeah. So you don't learn anything if you make that demand. You're not actually learning anything by the fact that they take it because you don't know what they're taking.
Well, I'm saying that we'd have to have someone that we trust to test to make sure this is the one.
Yeah, but we see the difficulty. No, like I'm saying, it's a pity Vasco's dropped out because that's why I specifically asked him to come on. If the consensus seems like people are saying, do not take the vaccine, what are the alternatives? Because I do believe there's something out there. People don't just lungs seize up and cannot breathe and being put on ventilator for fun. A lot of people who have lost relatives would take exception to people saying this do not exist because they've seen what has happened to their loved ones. So if we are saying that we are not convinced by the argument put forward so far by the authorities to take this vaccine, what then is the alternative approach when it comes to protecting ourselves from whatever is happening out there?
May I just say something?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I'm not saying that I'm not convinced by the arguments that are being put out. I'm saying that I've heard one argument, emphatically not from the government, which is talking about the specific dangers of the way the vaccine has been made. I'm not convinced by the strongest version of that argument that's put out by Kennedy. And I've heard a brother today on social media who is a doctor and who was talking rationally about the whole thing, saying that it's actually nothing like as dangerous as Kennedy is saying. All I'm saying is I don't have the evidence yet of what, having made the decision to use mRNA, what that actually means.
Okay.
But I might know in a day or two.
Okay, since Vasco is back, it's only fair for me to put him straight back in.
Yes,
We don't know if
I must apologize for this, but I keep saying, it keeps telling me that I'm secured and I'm connected, and yet it keeps dropping out. I don't know why. However, yes, bring us up to speed and let's make a few comments because I've got to attend another webinar in the next few minutes.
No, basically we would say that, okay, we're getting to a situation where even if it's not mandatory, the measures around it is so draconian that people will end up taking it anyway. Because if they restrict your ability to travel, your ability to do certain jobs, your ability to do all manner of things, people would just think, well, I might as well take it to give me that ability to get on with my life. Now, we brought up the example of Qantas, the Australian airline, who came out straight away when they heard about the vaccine and say, if you want to travel on our planes, you must take the vaccine. And there was an immediate backlash from people saying, okay, if you want to make it mandatory, we won't fly in your planes. And then they immediately backed down. So we are saying, should people be putting more pressure on the authorities to say, look, you know, we should be allowed to get on with our life in a relative way without being penalized for not taking this vaccine. So
that is what should actually happen. People should take off their masks, protest, go into the streets, let them know that they are the ones who elected the government and the government is there to work on their behalf, not government dictate to people. And ask yourself a simple question. If this vaccine was not as dangerous as they're saying it is, why do they want to mandate that people take the vaccine? It doesn't make sense. There are a lot of people getting rich out of it. And I actually played a tape this morning of Boris Johnson and looking at the connections with regard to those who are making the vaccines and those who are benefiting from it. And what you see is nepotism and cronyism. Yes, even firms and people who have no experience are being given contracts to produce these vaccines. All right. But let me turn to the United States of America for one moment. Most of the states where people are said to have died and where there are quarantines are Democratic-controlled states. The Republican-controlled states are the ones who have total and complete freedom of movement, and there have not been as many deaths and shutdown and destruction to those states' economies as in the Republican ones. But what is happening goes far above Democrat and Republican, Labor and Conservative, okay? That is what is happening. And the sooner people understand that this is a battle between good and evil, a battle between higher forces than just Labor Party and Tories, and the sooner they get that into their heads, they will understand what is happening. The world is going through a major shift from one paradigm to the next, and we are caught up in it. And the forces that want to enslave humanity are on their way out. And we have to see that bigger picture. Otherwise, we'll confine ourselves to this small little paradigm about this party against that party and that party against that party. What is happening is bigger than that.
Okay.
I'm not at all for that line of argument. I don't believe that we're menaced by forces that came on Earth in 1776. And
I didn't say forces that came on Earth. Go back and study Adam Weishaupt. Yes?
Yeah, I know. The first time I met you, you mentioned that same person, and I've actually spent some time on it. But leave that to one side. Inside of the argument that you just made about good and evil, I heard you 2 Mondays or Sundays ago on your radio program, and you were identifying Trump as one of the agents, of good, and I find that extraordinary, outlandish, amazing.
Oh, okay.
Right. Well, let us see how the next few weeks or months play out, and I sincerely hope, Cecil, that when it all plays out and I am proven right, you'll buy me a pint of beer.
Well, I hope that we will both be around to buy each other beers. I am very glad, and I'm not a Biden man, but I'm very glad that what you were talking about on this very program some months ago, where you were talking about a Trump or pro-Trump coup against liberals. And I don't understand.
No, hold on.
Okay.
Please, don't misquote me. Don't misquote me. Don't misquote me.
No, that's
I
interesting.
didn't
did you
say
say?
approach. I didn't say
Hold on,
approach
we're drifting
you
away from the
against
topic.
liberals. I didn't
I
say
know
that.
this would happen. We're drifting completely
Trump is not
away
creating
from
a
the
coup.
topic.
I'm,
People
I am
logged
very
on
glad.
today to hear
I am very
about
glad. One last point.
thing.
I'm very
Let's
glad.
keep to that and
that
let's look
if-
at
I'm very
solutions.
glad that if a coup is being planned, that Trump has been delegitimated by the election outcome.
No,
So-
That's an
false.
argument. Cecil.
False information.
They
I'm
won't be
gonna
able to
block-
say
I'm gonna-
that they defended
That is false information, Cecil, and it will be proven in the next few months.
Okay. I'll bring it
All
out
right,
to
all right,
Pepper.
Brother Hacker. Sorry about that.
Okay. We can always, this platform is available and we love to host a show dealing with that. So if you want, that's no problem to do. That's no problem because I'm sure a lot of people would be interested. I myself would be to hear more about that. But for today, if we stick to the COVID, because people who logged on today, they saw the title and that's the reason they came on. Now we have got to the point where we are saying, if we're skeptical about these vaccines, now we all have relations and stuff, what would you actively go to say to them? Okay, if you're saying to them, don't take it, what alternatives then would you propose? Would you say, okay, instead of taking it, the key to it is the immune system, and these are the ways to go about strengthening your immune system. And like I'm
all
saying,
of the proof.
Vasco was the main man to that. So
And that's what I spoke about earlier when I first came on, brother.
Yeah. You
Yes.
spoke about
don't-
it briefly.
Let me just
Sorry?
say that I don't have any arguments at all against the strengthen your African immune system arguments. It's very
Yes,
powerful.
but the
No,
idea.
I'm in total agreement with that.
No, listen.
No, right.
I'm in
Right,
total
so
agreement with that.
that's not
No.
the
Strengthen
area
your
of
immune system.
Vasco. What he was saying about that is right on.
Well,
And the
well, that's
healthier
why
we are,
yes,
better,
that's what I'm saying. I
more-
want to
more
explore that
refined to
more
that better.
because it's easy
Right.
to say to people, strengthen your immune system. Some don't know how to do it, so they're looking
Vitamin-
for information,
Right.
what to take, how to do it, how regular to take it, and so forth.
Let me
So
reiterate what I said. Give me the benefit then, and let me reiterate what I said when I first came on. Okay? Right.
Yeah.
Vitamin C. Okay?
Vitamin C. All right.
Right. Vitamin D3, which we as
Hope
Africans,
everybody's taking notes. Anyway, this will be
and it
left
must
up.
be
We can always
it must
go
be
back to
D
it.
it must be D3. No other form of vitamin D. Okay? D3. Zinc,
And
Okay.
why must it be D3?
because any other form of vitamin D is synthetic, and the body will not absorb it.
Right. Good.
Okay, must be D3 because we don't have the sunshine now and the heat of the sun to give us natural vitamin D.
Right.
Okay, zinc is very important. Even if there's no flu around in the wintertime, you should always take zinc because it strengthens your immune system and reduces your risk of getting colds and flus.
All right. I don't like taking
In what
tablets. So
form
what,
is zinc
what
taken?
food I eat to get zinc?
Sorry?
Because I don't like taking tablets. So what's the best foods for obtaining zinc?
Well, the best food for zinc is oysters, all right? But
I'm allergic to seafood.
taking a supplement, a zinc tablet of 30 milligram is adequate. Although you may not like supplements, that to my mind is the best source of zinc for us.
No, but is there vegetables, any kind of that I
Not,
can eat?
not that will supply the quantities
The
you want.
quantity. Okay. Right. That's clear. And again, what else?
We talk about vitamin C, we talk about vitamin
Right. So
D3.
vitamin C, is it better in tablet form or powder form?
Nope. Now that's you go into markets and you can get 3 and 4 grapefruits for about £1. Yes. Every morning, what you do, you slice the grapefruits in half and you squeeze the juice out and you drink it. And then that so-called pith, yes, that white membrane that you see in the grapefruit, don't throw that away. Okay. You put that in a juicer or blender and you drink that as well.
Okay.
Because that, believe it or not, is something called pectin, which helps remove heavy metals from your body, like lead, cadmium, aluminium, mercury, and all that kind of stuff.
Right. On many package of medication, it says, if you're on this medication, do not eat grapefruit.
The main one is the main one is a blood thinner called
grapefruit. What's an alternative to grapefruit?
sorry, Brother Tahaka. The main one is a blood thinning medicine called warfarin.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you don't want to take grapefruit to get vitamin C, kiwi fruits, guavas, all of those different fruits contain large amounts of vitamin C.
Okay. So far we've got vitamin D3, vitamin C, zinc.
Yes.
And you mentioned another one.
There are three others. There's nitric oxide, which you can get from beetroot. There's also coconut oil, which is particularly good because it's antiviral, antibacterial. Turmeric is also exceptionally good. Again, that's antiviral and antibacterial. Oregano is also
All
good.
right.
Black
Now, in terms of
cumin,
beetroot, is there an alternative? Because I'm a diabetic, so I can't take beetroot.
yes, you should. There's nothing that says you can't take beetroot.
Well, all the doctors are saying if you're a diabetic, do not take beetroot. It's too much sugar.
Well, I would challenge that and say the doctors don't know what they're talking about when it comes to diet.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what people are faced with out there. So if I don't go for beetroot, is there any other thing that I could get this nitric acid from? Can I go
Nitric
to a chemist
oxide,
and buy it in? Can I buy it in
Yes,
supplement
yes.
form?
You can actually go and buy nitric oxide in supplement form, yes.
Right. So you see, I just wanted to end on a positive note that people have tangible things that they could say, right, I don't want to take it, but I can go out there and I can acquire these things knowing.
But you see, the thing about it is there's a popular misconception that if you're diabetic, beetroot isn't good for you. But beetroot is perhaps one of the best vegetables that you can eat.
Yeah, what I'm just saying.
And if you're diabetic,
Maybe so,
you can
but
still eat
you
beetroot.
go to your doctor's surgery, and most people tend to listen to their doctors. You see, and that's the thing.
That trend is changing though.
Okay, we have got some practical steps here. And you also mentioned coconut oil, great
Yes,
antiviral.
antiviral. Yes.
Is there another thing that we could take as antiviral? The reason I'm saying that because I was speaking to somebody this morning and they said when people were saying about, taking steam baths.
Steam baths, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, as a good way. And people have been using
Eucalyptus oil.
These eucalyptus oil at such a rate that they're destroying in their membrane.
The sinuses. Yeah.
Yeah, their sinuses. So is there, if you're going to do that, should it be done once a day, once a week, twice a day?
I would say twice a week. I've got some eucalyptus oil here and it clears up your sinuses and all of that. But you only use that sparingly if you're finding it difficult to breathe.
Right, because
the real oils are cumin, holy basil, oregano, turmeric, cinnamon, cayenne pepper, coconut oil. All of those things are antiviral.
Right. You see that? See, this is solid information that people could get now and go out and implement something. Because from November, I've been taking 2 lemons
in the
garlic,
morning,
ginger, a bit of merengue,
That's a good
blending them
one.
all together. Sometimes I add some cayenne pepper to it.
Yes.
I'm blending it together and been taking that every morning. And if I feel occasionally like the flu is on the way or some viral infection is on the way, I probably take it in the morning and evening, and I've been totally free of any kind of virus or anything. So I'm living proof that those things work.
Absolutely. So am I. I take them every morning. Lemon juice with
for your age, you're looking remarkably well.
Well, I feel well. I feel well. I feel well. I've got another webinar coming up in another few minutes. And I do that every morning. Lemon juice with cayenne pepper.
Okay.
I don't know why this damn thing keeps shutting down.
Don't worry, we're almost. So, just to bring them back, Elder Cecil and Pepperkai, it's just I wanted to end that at least people got something concrete to take away, because we did discuss behind the scenes. This is some of the things we would be saying, that yes, if we are skeptical about vaccines, at least be doing something to strengthen your immune system and strengthen your body and giving you all the chances if you do come down with these viruses. Yeah, so just to sum up now.
To repeat,
Yeah,
I
come on.
don't have anything further practical to say on the vaccine. On the vaccines, I am checking out the meaning and implication of this recently out there information about mRNA and the impact of that on the human body. And how much of a transformation it is. That seems to me to be important. The stuff that we just had from our brother on ways of strengthening the immune system, I'm 100% in favor of.
Right, that's brilliant. So finally, the Pepperkai, I'll just ask you to sum up, and then I'll bring in Andrew Grimani.
Yes, like Brother Cecil, I've got nothing to add to what Brother Vaskov said. He made it quite clear, and his age of 78 is a testament of what he's doing, mean it's working. But I just want to add one point on this issue. For people who have taken the vaccine, there should be no force for people who don't want to take it, because those people have taken it. If they come into contact with somebody who hasn't taken it, the immune that the vaccine provides should be enough if it's of any use. So I'm saying that there's no need to be forcing vaccine on anyone. And what we should do is resist by making demand, and these people call themselves government, that we're not satisfied that it's safe, and they should lead by example, and they should take it first.
Here.
Yeah, okay. All right, so Vasco, since you're back, I'll just sum up with you. So any final points, and then I'll hand over to Andrew Grimani.
Yeah. No, seriously, we've got to look at the bigger picture. And understand what's going down. And if the virus is not as serious as people are beginning to realize it is, why are we having all these draconian measures put in place? Obviously, to cover another agenda that's going on behind the scenes. And that's the obvious reason. The world is going through a monetary reset, okay? And the people who've ruled the world for the last several years, something that Cecil doesn't agree with, but I hope to have this debate with him face to face one day in 2 months' time. 2 months' time. No, seriously, they're planning something called the Great Reset. Yes, and there's a fellow called Klaus Schwab. I don't know if you've come across him, Cecil. If you read his book.
Oh yeah. No.
Well, I would suggest you read that before we have our debate. Okay, so you'll have a few points to argue there.
Send me the reference.
All right. Okay. Now, we must strengthen our immune system. And part of strengthening our immune system means taking off the mask. I've never worn one. I've been on public transport all over the place. I have no intention of wearing one. Get out in nature, connect with fellow human beings, because mankind is gregarious. We need the company of other people. And when these people are talking about isolating you in your home, cutting you away from nature, cutting you off from nature, cutting you off from something called the Schumann resonance, which is an energy pulse that enhances our immune system. And the only time we connect with that is when we're out in the open. So if we're locked down indoors, that is in a way, one way to detrimentally affect our immune system and hasten us to an early grave. It stresses us out. when we are indoors. And that's why we'll find that mental illness, aggression, and all of that, they have all increased due to this lockdown, this draconian lockdown, which is totally unnecessary and is hiding something else, the great reset behind the scenes. That's what's happening. See the bigger picture.
Okay. All right, so I'll give it a...
I walk 2.5 hours most mornings.
What you say?
Sorry?
I said I walk 2.5 hours most mornings. And I believe in being out, and there's a wonderful park close to where I live.
Absolutely correct.
Brilliant.
Absolutely
Brilliant.
correct. Absolutely correct.
Brilliant. So we've ended on a hopefully, strong note, and I hope those who are watching today, gain some benefit from this discussion. Because as Elder Pepperkai says, it was here with us, and we were just drifting. There wasn't no concentrated thought to look what's happening to us. And you've brought up the Tuskegee experiments when we went like lamb to the slaughter and took all these vaccines because we believed in what we were told.
Absolutely.
Only to turn out that we were being experimented on. And since that, there's been numerous incidents of such a things being done with us. Now, I'm not saying it hasn't been done to other people, but we have got to look for ourselves first. So hence, yes, we always got to tread with caution, but at the same time, if we are prepared to say to somebody, don't do that, please, let's have an alternative. Let's have an alternative to offer. And thanks to Brother Vasco, he's given us the alternative, because all the scientists I've listened to, all of them without exception, have said the key to beating any virus is a strong immune system. All without exception, even Fauci himself have come out and say that. Strengthen your immune system and you will be able to withstand any virus out there. So I just hope that I'm saying people watching this would have got something tangible out of it. So as usual, we have come to the end of our discussion this week, but we'll be back next week again with something equally as exciting. So now I'd like to pass over to Ndugu Imani, who's here, and now we'll be changing the energy for us.
Okay, excuse me, I'm going to join another webinar now, yes?
Okay, Brother Vasco.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks for taking the part.
I'm licking my lips for that pint of beer you're going to buy for me.
Remember to send me the reference to your crazy book.
It's not my book, it's Klaus Schwab's book.
No, I know.
I'll send it to you. I'll get it and send it to you. Have a good night. Cheers.
Okay.
All right.
Take it easy.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, Brother Mane?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay, Asante Sana.
Take it
Asante
away
Sana. Okay, yeah, so again, Asante Sana Jamal, Asante Sana, Asante Sana to everybody watching, Asante Sana to Waze, Cecil and Pepperkai, and to, of course, to Baba Vasco, who gave and his opinions and his very vital, practical solutions for us, and that we can actually take. So I'm sure that people got a lot from what was been said, as Ndugu Tahaka excellently summarized. So we now end on our ritual. So I'm going to share my screen, Ndugu. Okay, and so just as we began with changing the vibration or invoking the vibration. And so we invoke the vibration again, the vibration that is the vibration of all things. That is the all that we are an aspect of. And Spirit says to me to play the chime 4 times. 4, because that is the it spiritually signifies health and wealth and abundance and foundation, which very much goes with what we've been talking about today. So if you wish to take part, please do. So please sit straight in whichever seat you are in, feet flat on the floor, your hands on your thighs, so that your 7 centers are in line. And I'll ring the chime. As we ring the chime, allow the vibration to go over you, around you, and through you. And we are concentrating, meditating upon giving thanks and recognition to the all, to the powers and principles that we called into this realm, and to our ancestors. And we're invoking that they assist us as they are us, and go back to their realm, go to their realms, and assist us in manifesting our objectives. But most important is our objectives is action and intent. Nothing happens without action and intent. By the very nature of us coming together, the very nature of us having these meetings, of us organizing, of having these intents to make a change, then they will assist us. We take a step towards them, they take 10 towards us. So as we are playing the chime, focus upon that. So I'll begin, and I'll count in Kiswahili. Moja. Mbili. Tatu. Nne. And now, with intent and power and concentration, we say the words of power and the affirmations on the screen. You see there in the colors of the red, black, and green, and also the translation is in purple, because purple is spiritually signifies intuition, divine knowledge. So just repeat after me with intent. Nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote
Kwa watu wetu
kwa watu wetu
na mapenzi ya wote
na
na mapenzi ya wote
ni mapenzi yetu.
ni mapenzi yetu.
All parts are people, and the will of the all is our will. Asanteni sana jamaa.
Okay, Santa Sana. And I'd just like to leave by reminding everybody about Kwanzaa. That's PACM National Kwanzaa celebration on the 26th of December between 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. And we'll be having, as you can see, national and international presenters and cultural performances and so forth. It will be held online due to the current situation. We will be broadcasting it live over YouTube and also Facebook. So that's something for your diaries. Please make a mark, because we would like as many people to participate in this as possible. So until next week, when we'll be back with another very interesting and dynamic. Yeah, Elder Sess, you want to say something?
I don't know if people are hearing, but there's some kind of feedback from somebody.
Yeah, it's coming from Elder Pepper Kai. It's coming from Elder Pepper Kai.
Help him to address that for next time. It actually...
Yes. I think I know what's happening. I mean, that's why I keep muting him. Okay, we sort that out. So until next week, I bid everybody Kwaheri.